Hey, thanks for joining in. My name's Jim Smith. I'm pastor of San Antonio Heights Community Church, and I'm sitting in our foyer. Just want to let you know what we're talking about this coming Sunday. We're going through the Gospel of John, and we're in John chapter 18. And I'm titling this, When Life Seems Unfair. Have you ever felt that? A friend betrays you, or maybe you get some false accusations of something that you did or said that you really didn't do. Or you find yourself just being in physical pain and you just don't deserve it. You know, I just saw something online from Voice of the Martyrs. They had this program called Hearts on Fire. Another lady said she was a gospel singer in a country in Africa, and she made a gospel album, and she was arrested and asked to sign that she would no longer sing evangelical songs. And she said, no, I love Jesus too much. And she was put in a container for over 300 days, a container in the middle of the desert. Jesus never promised that we would go through life problem-free with no difficulties. In fact, Jesus said, in this world, you'll have trials and tribulations, but listen, I promise you, I'll be with you all the time. And so as we look at this story in John chapter 18, not only does Jesus promise to be with us as we go through our tough times, and He'll be there. He's always there, no matter what you're going through. Right now, Jesus has been there too. Let's talk about unforeseen betrayals. Now, Jesus saw this coming, but sometimes we don't. You see this in John chapter 18. It says, Jesus, the betrayer, knew this place. Now, John's writing this because John was one of the disciples that trusted Judas, thought he was a good guy. In fact, all the disciples were amazed that this disciple, who they appointed as treasurer, could betray their leader, their rabbi, Jesus. And now he writes, Judas, the betrayer, knew that Jesus would be in the Garden of Gethsemane late at night because he knew that Jesus, when he was in Jerusalem, would often go to the Garden of Gethsemane. He betrayed Jesus. We get betrayed at times, unforeseen, out of the blue. That's not fair. And when life seems unfair, you go, God, why aren't you protecting me? Well, God is right there in the midst with you. And you just have to realize that God in the midst of this says, I'm your only hope. I'm the only one that's going to be there. And realize that. Trust in Jesus because He is our only lasting hope. Don't hope in friends. Don't hope in your job. Don't hope in a political party. Don't hope in anything other than Jesus. There's undeserved torture. You read this in John chapter 18. After Jesus was arrested and taken to one of the high priests, Annas was his name, then one of the temple guards standing nearby slapped Jesus across his face. Is that the way to answer the high priest? He demanded. Jesus replied, if I said anything wrong, you must prove it. And he was right. The Jewish Pharisees were hypocritical as they arrested Jesus. And Jesus knew it. He said, you must prove it. But if I'm speaking the truth, which he was, why are you beating me? Now the fact is, Jesus was beaten, was slapped. He had his beard pulled out. He was whipped with lead-tipped cat of nine tails. He was nailed to a cross, had a crown of thorns placed upon his head. He was tortured for his innocence. He did nothing wrong, but he was tortured. And there are times you go, why? Habakkuk said this, because he heard that his nation was soon going to be captured. He goes, even though the fig trees have no blossoms, and there are no grapes on the vines, and even though the olive crop fails, and the fields lie empty and barren, even though the flocks die in the fields, and the cattle barns are empty, yet I will rejoice in the Lord. I will be joyful in the God of my salvation. The sovereign Lord is my strength. He makes me as sure-footed as a deer, able to tread upon the heights. You got to realize that Jesus is our rescuer. Not in politics, money, success, or popularity. It's Jesus. Paul writes this, that Jesus who rescues us from the wrath to come. Jesus is our hope. Jesus is our rescuer, our deliverer, and we just have to trust in Him. You know, sometimes you just have to thank God for the times He answered prayer, not according to what you wanted, but what He wanted, which was, in the long run, better. Thank God for the times He slowed you down, and by doing that, He drew you closer to Himself. They're not true, untrue accusations. Pilate asked the Pharisees, "What is your charge against this man?" "We wouldn't have handed him over to you if he weren't a criminal," they retorted. Well, he wasn't a criminal. Pharisees got the wrong man, they tried him at the wrong time, and they accused him for the wrong things. They were totally in the wrong. But they come, and it was unfair. Accusations were not untrue. They did so much wrong. In fact, Jewish law says you cannot change the crime that you're arresting someone for. You can't change the charge. And so initially they charged Jesus with blasphemy. Pilate doesn't care about that. So when they brought him to Pilate, they said, "Oh, he's telling people not to pay taxes, and he claims he's the king." They had so many hypocritical things they did. They shouldn't have arrested Jesus at night. They shouldn't have held the 2 Jewish trials at night. They had 6 different trials, 3 Jewish, 3 political ones, 2 with Pilate, 1 with Herod. But they all were untrue accusations. They couldn't find anything that Jesus did wrong. Witnesses were lying. They couldn't agree. It was just untrue accusations. But here's what we realize, that Jesus is King, and the only real justice will be delivered by Him. Look again what Paul writes. "We proudly tell God's other churches about your," talking about the church in Thessalonica, "about your endurance and faithfulness in all the persecutions and hardships you are suffering," because they back then suffered a lot. "And God will use this persecution to show His justice and to make you worthy of His kingdom, which you are suffering. In His justice He will pay back those who persecute you." And just trust. When you have nothing else to depend on, your friends, your money, nothing, trust in Jesus. Count on Jesus, because He is the one person who can make a difference. Whatever you're going through, know that Jesus has gone through that as well. And He never sinned. But He's faced a lot of pain. He says, "I'll be with you." It's not easy. It's hard. Life is hard. But Jesus says, "I'll be with you. I'm going to give you my Spirit, and I will give you what you need to make it through." So hang on to Jesus. Count on Jesus. He's the only one really that lasts forever. And if you don't know Jesus, He is a lifesaver for someone that's just going through some rough times. You got to hang on to something. Hang on to Jesus. Admit you're a sinner. You go, what else? Ask Jesus to come into your life and forgive you of your sins and surrender your life to Jesus. Say, "Jesus, I want you to take control of my life. I want to become a Christian. I give my life to you." And do that today. And for those of you who are going through some rough times, God knows what you're going through. He'll be with you. He'll give you what you need to get through what you're going through. If you're ever in the area, drop by. We'd love to see you here at 10:15 every Sunday. Bye-bye.